Welcome to part 2 of my tournament report, and we had a few technical issues there and it may well have chopped the video in half, so this could be a whole separate thing here now. So I believe this is where we were up to. So someone commented that you have to drop loot tokens in the unit's footprint, and that is true, and I believe that's what the unit did, and then they charged after it, which is why it's not actually on them at the moment. And here you can see that these trolls became wavered as a result of being attacked by the Elohai, but they've got Dwarven Ale. And looking at this situation here, oh, Russell says it is a new video, but I'll just slap part 2 on it, so that'll be alright. And you can see that the trolls on the hill actually have a view at the flank of the Elohai now. The Elohai, who I was hoping to have killed about 3 turns ago, and especially last turn, they're still alive. So I'm thinking that I can charge in the flank with the trolls on the hill and in the front to definitely get rid of them once and for all. Which does mean that that unit of Forest Shamblers, that horde right in the middle there, will be brought into play. Because they will be able to charge something if I do that. But I'm not confident enough that the trolls charging into that Forest Shambler regiment would be able to do enough to guarantee killing them and then not be charged in the rear by those Shamblers. So I'm thinking that I'm going to charge in the flank of the Elohai, just get them completely out the way, and then turn around and deal with the rest. Because they're a pain and they should have been dead long ago, by my estimation. So, turn 5, for me, these trolls are just on the right flank. They're not really involved in the game because the character carrying the objectives, the push tokens for the enemy, can just keep running away from them. But they keep ploughing their way through. And these two units, the trolls, one in the front, one in the flank, you can see they've regened a lot of wounds as well. They do kill off the Elohai finally, and I'm still carrying those tokens, by the way. They just fell off the base because they're perched on the side of the hill there. So my plan here, I've turned to face the Forest Shambler horde and turned to give a flank to the regiment. So this unit's going to die, whoever charges them, and then the unit behind them can then charge into somebody else, whoever's up there, and taking the tokens off them and then steal them back. That's the plan. It's kind of all gone a bit wrong when those Elohai didn't die when expected, because Grogger's goons sacrificed their perfectly good lives to bring them into that trap, and then 2 wounds dealt by the trolls kind of put an end to that. So ideally as well, I would have liked to have had the Forest Shambler regiment in the middle on more wounds by this point in the game, so that the trolls who were facing down with them could have charged into them and basically guaranteed killing them and then overrun to get out of harm's way. But they weren't near enough death for that to be realistic, in my opinion. So there's how it's looking, and it's not looking great anymore because of those Elohai hanging on too long, and the Bruiser just keeps being wavered. Or he's been wavered once now, but that was at the crucial moment. And over here, turn 6, so again the trolls are being blocked in, which is very viable. And then all this forest shamblage onto those trolls there. Now they could have dropped the tokens at some point, and then the other trolls behind could have possibly picked them up, but we'll see if that comes back to bite me at all. So those trolls do get killed, and the Forest Shambler horde steal them, so I'm going to charge in the front and try and take them out now. Blaine kills off the Bruiser, and I'm not sure if that's the total damage. How much was he on earlier? The Bruiser, let's see. Is there actually a picture of the dice, or is he obscuring it each time? Oh, it looks like 4. So maybe I haven't just marked the extra damage yet. But he kills the Bruiser, so there's how it's looking in the middle. Not very healthy. But in my turn, the trolls steam in and actually completely obliterate those Forest Shamblers in one go, which is great. And they pick up the tokens, should I say. And that is where the unit is going to finish there, with the tokens staring down the small unit of Forest Shamblers. So we've both got 3 lots of tokens each. Those trolls are steaming towards them. And this is the end of turn 6, I think. So the game could end here. And it actually does end there. So yep, that's the end of the game. So we've got 3 tokens each, and we're thinking it might be a draw at this point, so we quickly start measuring to see whether my unit is fully inside the opponent's half, and unfortunately it is not. So you can see where the troll unit is. The front of them are in the right place, and the back portion of the unit is kind of hanging off. So let's just go all the way back to the first image from the game, because we're going to look where the central token was, which should show the exact center line of the table. So let's keep going until that token is on the ground somewhere, and then we'll whiz all the way forward again. Still going, and it's still been picked up by this stage. Drop Mr. Token, there you go. So you can see where it is on the hill, and the back rank of the trolls that had slid down the hill, they weren't quite over that point. The trolls are pretty much on that whole area though, so they were only just outside of being wholly within my opponent's half. So unfortunately I don't have any push tokens in my opponent's half, and my opponent has 3 in mine. So that is going to be a loss. I would say I don't think my plan was horribly flawed. I think I tied up too many units on my right flank worrying about the enemy tokens when I could have committed more stuff in the centre and just gone all out for that. If I'd had more trolls there, perhaps that would have helped. Because the ones on the right killed things, which is great, but it didn't really help me win the game, obviously, because they ended up there just fighting characters who admittedly had to throw their lives away, and they could have been helping out the battle. But it was not to be. So, on to game number 2. Now this scenario is pillage. So you can see where the tokens are because they're very bright green, and you can also see that I'm on the same table again here, and I'm against the Twilight Kin, also known as the Twiglet Kin. Now, you know, earlier I mentioned that there were several lists that I was very eager to avoid at this event. This was one of those lists. So you'd think after losing game 1, you'd get the lists you're less concerned about in round 2, but that's not always how it goes. This is one that I was very concerned about because it's got massive shooting and speed superiority over my army. And we will see why shortly. So, pillage, of course, you want to be sitting on those tokens at the end of the game. And they are positioned as kind of 3 in almost a straight line down the middle, 1 being in the centre of that hill. 1 is just in front of my deployment zone in the middle of the table, and then there's 1 all the way over on the right. So I was able to position more of them on the left, and I'm going to focus more of my forces over there. So one possible deployment mistake here, there's all the tokens that I want are over on this side. So there's not really much need for me to go for the right flank at all, and possibly those 2 troll hordes sitting in the difficult terrain could have been over here on the left, helping out at this side and not even worrying about the right, because there's some crossbow badness over there that's going to be able to contribute to the game, and it's possible I could have just kind of taken them out of the game entirely by deploying more stuff over here on the left, because again I outdropped my opponent, but I've spread out a bit, so we'll see how that works. Obviously you don't know exactly how your opponent's going to deploy when you start, and it depends which units you put down first and so on. And there are certain things I wanted to save till the end to make sure they had a view of enemy units, such as the rock lobbers, because there are some chariots on the enemy side, who of course have difficulty hiding because they can't hide behind all the height 2 hills. So over on this side I've got trolls that can just fit down that crevice between the edge and the impassable terrain. The sniffs, trombone, the other 2 trombones, some trolls, the bruiser, Grogger's goons, the rock lobbers are all fairly central, and those 2 troll hordes in pretty much the middle of the table there. And over at this side we've got more sniffs and Flaggit hiding behind the hill. So, my opponent's army here, we've got some gargoyles, got a hero on horse, there is a dragon, and the Twiglet Kin dragons have quite a ferocious lightning bolt attack, so it's long range, which makes it even more dangerous than the elf dragons. There are some knights, and there are 2 hordes of crossbows, and they have upgrades on them as well. I think one of them might be elite, and one of them has piercing, possibly. Then there's a chariot horde, I think they have the caterpillar, not 100% on that, but I think they do, and they're positioned in the woods. They can see out and shoot through the woods, and also just sit there, wait for the enemy to come into range, and then charge out unhindered. I think that's the plan there. There is a kind of standard bearer character there, who I believe has Bane Chant, and there's another dragon. So, turn 1. I do get turn 1, and I just start advancing. I don't want to get in charge range of dragons yet, though. And I'm going to try to shoot down the chariots. That's the number one thing I think I can shoot. And I'm going to be targeting my rock lobbers directly at them. So I've kind of abandoned the right flank a bit with my Flaggit, who's run over there just to inspire those trolls, I think. And the Sniffs are still just hiding, because I don't want the enemy flyers on the right flank as I look at it to just advance into my flank without worrying about anything. So if I put the Sniffs there, it gives them something to think about, and hopefully I can hold them up for a while and tie up 3 units maybe over there for a while with them. So the Rock Lobbers, I think one of them hits and puts 4 damage on the chariots, but not enough to waver them or anything. So turn 1 for the enemy. And they don't do much movement at all, but there is going to be lots of shooting. So look at that. Grogger's goons take the brunt of it. Crossbows from the chariots and the crossbow horde to the face. And they don't get killed though. Despite being on 17 damage, it must have been a very mediocre nerve roll, so they get a bit lucky there. Crossbows on this side, who really I shouldn't have allowed to have a target. And this dragon, they put 7 damage onto those trolls. And this dragon puts a bit of damage onto the Sniffs over on that side. These trolls become wavered, which is really annoying because they don't have any way to counteract the effects of that, so they're going to be standing in the middle of no man's land for a bit. And the Sniffs become wavered as well, which is annoying because it cuts down my shooting attacks. Obviously that was a fortunate roll to waver them, but the trolls was a bit more likely. And there's how it's looking. So it's not ideal because I'm just marching forward into gunfire, and then the enemy has the speed advantage as well. So I'm going to have to move into their charge range if I want to do any fighting, unless I get really lucky with the rock lobbers and somehow outshoot them and just delete units, which isn't looking likely at the moment. But turn 2. So the Sniffs pop out around there, and the Flaggit heads over there because they both want to shoot the gargoyles that are lurking in the woods. And they do actually kill them, so that's good. That's 1 less unit to sit on an objective. Everything is advancing up there. The trolls onto the hill. The trolls that were wavered obviously couldn't, so they're just chilling out, waiting. Trombones moving forward in support. Trolls and the Bruiser are not going into range to be attacked, so they're holding back a little bit. But Grogger's goons, who are at death's door, they might as well just throw themselves forward as fast as possible, because they're going to die regardless. And over here, the trolls are positioning themselves just to look in there. Maybe I could have just advanced everything full speed here and get charged and just deal with the consequences, but we'll see. Rock Lobbers, what do? More damage onto the chariots, but I think when I rolled to wound, I didn't do too well here. So they are not dead yet, despite the damage racking up on them. So there's how it looks, and okay so far, but I'm still walking into that wall of death, and the way the battlefield is set up, I do have to overrun some of the objectives and not sit on them to get to the enemy, so I would have to then turn around and come back to win the scenario. So we'll see if that works. Turn 2 for the Twilight Kin. So the dragon has turned inwards to look over the top of his own chariots into the centre of my lines, which is going to allow me to advance on the left. So I'm quite happy that he's done that. And they're just going to shoot and try and shoot me to death here. So the hero, the chariots, they all put some damage onto... Actually, I think that hero just moved. I think that was an unrelated picture. So the chariots shoot up Grogger's goons and finish them off. And the 2 crossbow hordes, I believe, shoot the trolls on the hill. And that hero shoots the Flaggit. So the Flaggit is dead, trolls are dead, and the goons are dead. Wow. So, kind of underestimating the enemy shooting here, or overestimating the survival ability of inspired trolls. I think they were inspired at least. So, I think really I could have just totally ignored that side of the table and put everything committed to the left. My turn 3. So, the Sniffs are moving up and they're going to start pelting the enemy with shots, ineffectively, I'm sure. And everything else is moving up, and those trolls there decided they don't want to go straight up onto the hill and get double gunned down by crossbows. So They're just going left now. Change of course. Rotlobbers hit the floor, so nothing this time. These sniffs, who are no longer wavered, shoot some more damage onto those chariots. But again, I was hoping they would be dead a lot earlier than this. So it's looking quite bleak. So I'm having to just advance up now because I need to get into a fight rather than just being pincushions. And you can see I've abandoned that side of the table now, so really I should have done that earlier. And the enemy start advancing on their turn now because they've realised there's nothing left to fight over here because it's all run away or died. So the knights and the crossbows are heading in this direction. The dragon is being held up by the sniffs though, which is okay. Chariots going to the trolls there. Crossbows, lots and lots of crossbows and lots of other shooting. The only real major damage that's done is the sniffs there, get put up to 7, and the other sniffs get killed. And I believe that, was that a war trombone that was killed there? Could have been one of the trombones. Yeah, I think it was. So one of the trombones dies there as well. And those sniffs become wavered. And the trolls with the Dwarven Ale become wavered, which obviously isn't the worst thing that could happen. So again, I'm getting a little bit low on numbers, but in terms of the scenario, it's not too bad at this stage. I've got 3 scoring units left. I've got the sniffs over on the right as well, behind my camera. But they're probably going to die soon. But these 3 units here, I am between the enemy and most of the objectives though. So we'll see. The enemy may have a choice of whether to fight or whether to go for objectives. So these sniffs are just going backwards because if the enemy are going to take them out, I want them to come as close as possible away from the fight and the objectives. The Rotlobbers hit the floor again. The trolls failed their Dwarven Ale roll, unfortunately, so they couldn't help out, but the other trolls did steam into the one little bit of the chariot base that was visible and finished them off. Possibly too late though. And the Troll Bruiser charged into the crossbows to stop them shooting. And it's looking a bit more healthy with the chariots dead, but again, I would have liked them to have been dead probably 2 turns ago, with everything that was thrown at them. And the trombones are hiding behind that hill to avoid any ranged attacks. So, and there's the other side, which I've all but abandoned. This rock, though, seems to hit the dragon and do a bit of damage, but not enough. Okay, enemy turn. Enemy turn 4. And they're closing in on the sniffs again. They should be able to shoot them down now. And the dragon on the left positions itself so that it can just look down my flank. So I may have to turn around to face that now and then look away from some of the other units. Over on this side, the knights and the crossbows and the dragon decide they don't want to be tied up with sniffs any longer. They're going to come and join the fray. This dragon with its ranged attack puts 1 damage on a war trombone. The other dragon puts 2 damage on a Rotlobber. And this hero here, I think, finishes off the sniffs. Lots of damage on them, so they're dead. The Rotlobber becomes wavered as a result of the ranged attack. The Bruiser takes 1 damage from the counter charge there, so he's not worried yet. Turn 5 from me. So trombones move onto the hill and viciously trombone the crossbow horde. All 3 of them have a go at that horde, but only do 12 damage, which is probably about right. The wizard goes up onto the hill to try and slow down that dragon to prevent it charging me, and succeeds in wavering it. I don't know if you can see there's a little waver token behind it there, so that's good. The rocks hit the other dragon. We're starting to turn it around a bit now, chipping away at things, getting damage done. The Bruiser, even though he's going to be flank charged by the knights, he just accepts that and just charges into the crossbows again. Do a bit more damage on them and stop them shooting for another turn. Because if he allowed them to shoot, they would be able to mercilessly gun something down in the next turn. And he would just get killed by the knights, even with a front charge, probably. So there's how it looks. It's looking a bit healthier now, with that dragon on the left being wavered and lots of enemy units being damaged. But it's still a bit precarious. Turn 5 for the enemy. So, look at that human hand there. So everything moving towards the main battle. What do these crossbows do? The ones that were viciously tromboned Well, they take out some sweet vengeance by getting rid of that one. The dragon behind them shoots another one, and that dies. Both of them die. The Troll Bruiser is flank charged and countercharged by the crossbows and is killed as expected, but he was willing to accept that fate, and then they turn to face the trolls in the woods. So that horde of crossbows is damaged, so I may be able to take them out with the hindered troll charge at some point. Turn 6. So the trombone gets into position and trombones the crossbow horde off, so they're not holding an objective now. And the trolls charge into that crossbow horde, but despite doing a fair bit of damage, cannot finish them off. The wizard wavers the dragon again, by the looks of it, which is great. And the rocks hit the floor again. So disappointing game from them. They haven't really had any impact. I don't think they've caused anything to die with one of their hits yet. They've just done little bits of damage on units that ultimately survived for a long time afterwards. And it's lucky that the wizard was able to waver that dragon, because I had to turn the trolls back on the dragon and just hope for the best, because I need to face those knights. And at the moment I'm sitting on 1 objective, and my opponent is sitting on 0 as far as I can see. So it's, actually my opponent is sitting on 1 with the dragon at the top of the screen there, because there's one in the woods, so it's 1 each at this stage, which I think is quite good going, but I'm going to have to face a charge from those knights with the trolls, who are inspired by the wizard. Turn 6. And the dragon just backs off because it's wavered. And the knights charge in to the trolls, who are inspired, but it's still going to be dicey whether they live or die. And that dragon is just chilling out on the objective, and he's going to kill another trombone with the help of that character as well. So the trombone is dead. The trolls take a bit of damage from the crossbows, but not much. And those trolls do get killed. Wow, wow. So that's not good news. And the knights overrun onto the objective there. So my opponent is on 2 objectives now, and I've only got 1 scoring unit left. So the game is pretty much over at this stage. And that is that. We do not get a turn 7. Had there been turn 7, I would have had chance to shoot the rocks at the units, the enemy units that were on objectives, and try to kill them. It would have been unlikely, but that dragon is wounded at the top of the screen there, so a rock hit on there, 2 rock hits onto the knights. Stranger things have happened. And then I could have wavered the dragon again with the wizard. Yeah, so it was possible. Just slightly unlikely that with turn 7 I could have got something out of it. So the lesson here is you don't need to treat every battle as if you're a World War I general when you come up against an enemy gun line. You don't have to walk into every single machine gun battery that you're up against. You can use the terrain to your advantage. I had a lot of trolls at height 2, so the same height as that hill right in the middle, which I could have used by deploying everything on the left and just not being shot by one of the crossbow hordes, which would have helped a lot. And I could have just threatened that area with the sniffs, which is what I did, and possibly had more success, maybe had just enough to punch through the enemy over there, because in the end I just ran out of support when the chariots didn't die when I expected them to. So going on to turn 3, and that's 2 losses now. I'm coming to this, I was on the back of 9 consecutive Goblin competitive tournament wins, including the last tournament where I won all 5 games, and the other 4 were at Clash of Kings, 4 in a row to finish off that event. So, not an ideal start to this tournament, but then again I have come up against lists that I was concerned about beforehand, and could have done better in certain situations, but I think also there were a few moments of bad luck thrown in there as well. In the first game I picked up quite a reasonable number of points actually, because I got lots of kill points and I was holding on to tokens at the end of that one, but in this game, game 2, I only got 1 point for kill points because I barely finished anything off at all. I think I only killed the chariots and 1 crossbow horde, which is very disappointing indeed. And obviously I wasn't holding on to any of the objectives at the end, so not many points scored there. Next round, that is Dominate scenario. And this is another one of the lists. This is an elf list, and elven lists with lots of speed, lots of flyers. Flyers I'm not overly concerned about. I've got lots of flyer defense in my list with the trombones and the diadem and the sniffs, who are really good at dealing with flyers because they can spin around on the spot and shoot unhindered. Not too concerned about the flyers, it's the speed of those flyers that's the main concern. So the fact that they fly isn't that much of an issue. But they're fast, and they've also got really good shooting as well. They've got a horde of archers and a chariot horde, who, as we saw, are very shooty in the elven realms. So you can see here, though, with it being dominate, I said, didn't I? I've put most of the meat of my army in the centre of the table, and I've completely ignored the right. I don't want to spread out too much, because if you deploy everything in the middle, then you give the enemy a chance to surround you. If you deploy all the way across the table, then you spread too thin, and especially when you've got breath weapons for flyer defense, if you have to spread them out a lot, then dragons, for example, will quite happily land within range of one of them, because that's not going to be enough to kill them. So kind of concentrating my forces around the middle. The enemy has superior speed, so I want to just get into the centre and hold it, and hold just half the board. It's easy to avoid being flanked, and then defend my right flank with a mobile sniff unit who are just going to chill out and try and avoid being killed, and hopefully not get killed by chariots. So there's the big blob of meat in the middle, loads of trolls, the bruiser, the trombones right up behind the units. They're not going to get charged by flyers. The lobbers, you can see, I've positioned them behind a hill, which you may think, why have you done that? What can you see? Well, the enemy have chariots that are height 3 and dragons, and some really tall, juicy units that I can shoot at. So that's the thinking behind that. And the other rock lobber is positioned to stare into the centre of the table as well, because obviously it's the dominate zone. And down at this flank, we've got my more shooty stuff in the woods, so they can just dip their toe in there to shoot if they want to, and back out the woods if they don't want to be charged. So the enemy lines, we've got a horde of Draken Riders. We've got a Dragon Lord. We've got an Elven King with the wings of Honeymaze, so more flyers. Got some, I think they're Forest Shamblers. I think that's what they are in the Elven unit. I'm not sure if they're allies or not, or whether they're just part of the list. But there's a regiment of them. There's some, what were the cavalry called? Is it Silver Breeze Cavalry? I think that's what they're called. Or it could be Stormwind. One or the other. Stormwind sounds like more of a ferocious one. I think they're the heavier cavalry of the two, so I think that's what it is. And then we've got the Archer Horde there, who have the additional 12-inch range, and they've got a couple of heroes behind them as well. Chariot Horde and a Draken Rider Lord, who is, I would compare him to a vampire lord on a Pegasus. It's not as good as a dragon, but it's cheaper than a dragon. So there's the dominate zone in the middle there. Turn 1. So I get the first turn, just advance everything up into the middle, laying down my claim for this territory, and then I'm just going to turn. The trolls on the left are going to just turn in that direction to avoid being flanked by enemy flyers, and the centre, I feel like I've got enough meat in there, just grouped it all together, and I think that's going to cut through the enemy quite handily there, especially if it gets into a grind. I think the way this is set up, I think it's fairly good for me. So the rock lobbers delete the chariot horde. 2 of them hit in the first turn and obliterate the chariots. So that's a great start there. The sniffs move up into the woods and put a bit of shooting damage onto the Draken Riders, which is nice. And you can see now that this looks like a very healthy situation for me. The enemy have got lots of mobility, but the hitting power has been limited by those chariots dying, and if they just launch themselves straight into any of my units, there's a lot going on there that can give them a bad time. If they go for the middle, and whatever they attack around there, they're going to be charged by multiple troll-based units, and there's trombones there as well. If they go over to the left, the trombones can head over that way. And of course, I can turn my trolls in that direction to avoid giving them the flank, and they don't have much to threaten me with coming through the middle. There's just that little Forest Shambler unit, and I'm just staying behind the woods, so they can't get me at this stage. There's nothing to surge them with, which is good. Turn 1 for the enemy. So the Draken Lord is advancing up and looking down my flank, but he's not in charge range or anything yet. He's not able to reach that far. The Dragon and the Draken Riders move up onto that hill. They want to get around my flank, and the Elf King with the Wings of Honeymaze and the Shamblers are not in the woods yet. They're just chilling out there, biding their time. And the archers are going to shoot. These trolls do not get cover because they're mostly on the hill behind Grogger's goons, so they're going to take 8 damage there, but not enough to get rid of them. And that's the end of that turn. So turn 2 for the goblins. So everything is advancing forward again. Those trolls are now successfully off the hill. And many of my units are waiting behind the woods because it dominates, so they might as well just stay in that area. These trolls, one of them has had to dip their toe into the woods though, and allow the risk of the elf, I think it's Elf King, who can fly, attacking the flank there, which would be fine. It'd survive that, and then that character would get mercilessly obliterated, most likely. So they're just turning to threaten in case any of those flyers want to charge into my sniffs, or either one of those troll units. There'll be something to deal with them regardless. And the sniffs do more damage to the Draken Riders. So chipping away, and the Rotlobbers, what do they do? And they don't hit anything this time. So the sniffs, these are the sniffs on my right flank, where, well, I don't really have a right flank, but they're in the middle, and they put damage onto the Draken Rider Lord. So you can see this defensive formation I've got, and those sniffs are there to chase around that Lord. If that Lord wants to attack the flank of my force, then he's not going to be able to get into charge range of the trolls or the goons without being in charge range of the sniffs. And the sniffs will be able to see him over the hill because he's height 3, and then they can charge him. So if he offers up a flank, they'll gladly take that. And it's looking quite healthy at this stage. Turn 2 for the enemy. So instead of charging in, they decide to play it a bit more subtly, and the Dragon and the Drakens loop round the side there to get into the flank, so I'm just going to have to keep rotating to face them. And the Draken Lord decides he's going to lay down the gauntlet, get to within charge range of multiple units, and because if he wants to charge me, he has to come within to the charge range of the sniffs, so I'm probably going to try and take that charge on and hope to do 1 damage and disorder him. The trolls behind the Grogger's Goon unit do take more damage from shooting despite being in cover, and they are killed. And over here, a bit of damage is done to those sniffs. I think that's with the breath attack from the dragon. So it's still looking healthy. I've got lots of unit strength are in and around the dominate zone, and the enemy do not at this stage. Turn 3 for the goblins. So the Bruiser and the trolls are both into the woods now. They're out of range of the Forest Shamblers who have moved back, and Grogger's goons are pushing forward towards the archers. Over here, the sniffs have turned round, and the Flaggit has moved round to the side to flame away at the Draken Riders, and I think they become wavered as a result of all the shooting targeting them. The other sniffs on the right-hand side charge into the Draken Lord, and they do damage, and they actually waver him, which is a lucky roll to do that, but they would have disordered him anyway, which was their intention, so he couldn't fly. And the Rotlobbers didn't have any targets this time, so you can see that they've turned 1 in each direction. So it doesn't matter that they're shooting through each other, because all the targets that they will want are higher than they are, so they're not going to block each other's view. So you can see the trolls are positioning themselves, and also, because I didn't know the Draken Riders were going to be wavered at this point, and the dragon is also a threat, I've positioned all my War Trombones and characters behind other units there so they can't be charged. And still looking very healthy, but there are elven units in reserve. So the dragon decides to charge into the sniffs because the Drakens can't. And the Forest Shamblers and the Stormwind Cavalry double charge into Grogger's goons there, which is acceptable, because they probably won't kill them because the knights are going to be hindered, and then I've got trolls around there ready to pounce. The archers, they take out the sniffs that were wavering the Drakenlord. And these sniffs become wavered by the dragon, which is fine. And that is that, because there's not too much damage done to the Grogger's goons here, and the elf flying king there just landed near them. So there's how it looks. Still healthy, still controlling the centre. Turn 4. So the trolls. The Grogger's goon unit countercharged the knights, and the troll horde charge into the front of the forest shamblers and the bruiser into the flank, so killed them quite handily. But the knights aren't killed, but Grogger's goons have regenerated some wounds. These trolls had a flank charge on the dragon, who failed to kill the sniffs, because I'm sure he would have expected to kill them in one round. But alas, he ends up getting flank charged there, the dragon, and gets wavered as a result. The Draken Riders take a bit more damage, I think, but they don't get wavered this time, so they're going to be able to fight now. And for the trolls to fit into the flank of the dragon, though, the sniffs did have to move backwards a bit. So they're moving away from the centre, but I feel like it was a good time to strike to get flank on the dragon, which doesn't come along very often. Then we're on to my opponent's turn now, obviously. So the dragon charges into the sniffs and the Draken Riders into the trolls. I would hope the trolls would survive that, because it is a hindered charge there. And the knights go back into Grogger's goons with the help of the king, so I would expect the goons to survive that. Probably, because the knights aren't going to have any thunderous charge, I think. They do get healed, some of their wounds back there. The bruiser gets shot down by the archer horde. 5 damage though, so it took a roll of 10 twice to kill him. So that's not very good. And look at all that damage though onto the horde of Grogger's goons, so they die as well. Wow. So it's not looking so healthy anymore. Still fairly confident though. The sniffs get killed by the dragon. The trolls against the drakens take 9 damage, and they die as well. So suddenly lots of units have been wiped out, and I've only got 2 scoring units left now. But they are in the dominate zone, and I've got lots of shooting left. So turn 5. The trolls charge into the knights, who killed the goons and waver them. All my shooting attacks converge on the 2 flyers. I've got the wizard, I've got the trombones, I've got the flagget and the rock lobber. The rock lobber there and this one. And combined, all of that, I managed to kill off both of the big flying threat units. Finish them off because they were already wounded. The dragon and the Draken horde both dead. So that's nice. So both sides only have 2 scoring units left, I think, now. Turn 5 for the elves. So the archers, they shoot up the trolls, but not enough to kill them or waver them. And the knights are just positioning themselves there. And I believe the elf king kills off a trombone. So my trombones are too far away to affect the game now, but the wizard isn't. And it's looking very dicey though, suddenly. It's been very swingy. Turn 6. So the trolls kill the regiment of knights at the second attempt. Regenerate some wounds, sit in difficult terrain. The other trolls are just chilling out because they're majority within 12 of the centre, and they can't reach the rest of the game now. So they're just going to just hang out there. The wizard can affect the game though, so he's going to be sprinting up there, ready to unleash his lightning bolt, and wavers that hero who was healing units previously. So that's quite good. And on my opponent's turn, possibly the final turn, and the way that this fight is going here, if these trolls do not die, then the archer horde won't be able to get their majority within 12 inches of the centre, because they would need to overrun to do that, to get close enough. So the trolls do not die, so if the game ends now, it's going to be a win for the goblins. See, there we are checking to see whether they were within majority within 12, and they are not. But there is a turn 7. So had it ended there, the goblins would have won. But we're going to turn 7. And what I did here, so the wizard decided to jump down here into the fight. So let me show you where he was. So the wizard is over on the other side of the trees there. He whizzes all the way around there, and the intention here is to just block up that unit in such a way that he can't be charged. So if the archers kill the trolls, they won't be able to overrun them because the wizard will be in the way. And the wizard, just all he needs to do to prevent himself being charged is make sure that his front arc is the one that would be charged by the elves, which it was, and make sure that they can't touch his front facing. So he's up to the trolls there, so he's not going to be able to be charged by them, by the archers, because obviously that would be bad if they could just kill the wizard and then overrun into the trolls, because they might be able to kill both of them. So the archers now, if my calculations are correct, are pretty much stuck and cannot contest the area now. So turn 7, because I countercharged with the trolls and didn't kill them. So the trolls get charged again, the archers, who are not hindered this time, and the king with the wings behind. So there's how it's looking, and they do successfully kill the trolls, and obviously they can't overrun, so we play about with the pivot options to see where they could end up, because the presence of the wizard there makes it very difficult, because of course they have to then bounce away an inch from him, and the centre of the unit, you can see roughly where it is there, so obviously that has to end up in the same place. So you can see where they end up, and we get the old tape measure out and figure out that they are not quite within, majority within 12 of the centre. The 12-inch line does not quite extend beyond the middle of the unit when we put them down into their final resting place. But the trolls are happily within the zone there. So that is going to be a win by about half an inch to the goblins. 1 scoring unit left each. Not a vast amount of killing done on either side. We killed just over half each other's army in points terms, but we killed the scoring units and left everything else alive pretty much. So that's how that goes. And let's see. So I only got 1 victory point for the scenario because I only had 1 unit within the scoring area, because it's on the number of units when it comes to the bonus victory points for this tournament. It's unit strength for determining who wins the game, but when it comes to giving you bonus tournament points, it's 1 for each unit. Let's see, Bart, could the wizard move at the double into difficult terrain? No, he didn't move through the difficult terrain. So, if we look back here, let's see if we can get a position of the wizard. So he is allowed a single pivot with moving at the double, so you can see where he is there. He's not quite at the top of the woods, so he basically goes straight forwards, then stops at the top of the woods, uses his pivot, and then flies straight down into the flank of the trolls there. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, moving on. To game number 5. So this one is Plunder, and this is where there are 5 objectives on the centre line, and after they're placed you then pick 1 each that's going to be worth 2 victory points to hold, and the others are all worth 1. So you can see that I'm against Abyssal Dwarves. Now this is a very, very tasty looking army. This is one of the armies that won. There were 2 Best Painted Awards, the Player's Choice and the Judge's Choice. This won one of them. So very, very nice army. And the objective markers are painted to match that army as well. So the planning here, you can see again I've gone for this big blob of trolls in the centre because the 2 valuable objectives, I'll show you where they are in a minute. But over on this flank, the Sniffs always like to go out on the flank because they can get into juicy positions. You can see all the trombones together, as I am learning that the trombones, when they stick together, then that's nice. Let's see. But sure, but is the lake difficult? Yes, that's a good point there. Let me go back and have a look. Let's see here. Yeah, does he end up in the lake? Because I didn't even think about that. Where's the old wizard? Yes, he does actually. Maybe that may have been an illegal move then. So the wizard ending up there may have not actually been possible. So what he would have had to have done is end up not quite. I think it's still possible to do virtually the same thing while not being inside the terrain. Let's have a look here. To stop them overrunning, I think he probably could have tilted into... It's hard to see exactly what shape the lake is. Let's go back to before the wizard was on there. Okay, yeah, they do overhang the edge of the lake a bit, so I think he would have been able to get the corner of his base just to... You see where the lake sticks out a bit, and then it curls in towards them. I think he would have been able to get his corner stuck into that kind of groove there and still be an inch away from them. So I think effectively it would have been the same thing to prevent them overrunning. And then, as we saw, the pivot wouldn't be enough to get them within 12 inches of the centre. So I think it should still have worked, because with a pivot, their centre point wouldn't be able to move, and they have to get the centre point closer to 12 inches, which they wouldn't be able to do with a pivot. So I think it still would have worked. But yes, that was actually an illegal move. So well spotted there. That just didn't occur to me at all, that. Obviously didn't occur to either of us during the game. But thankfully, I think it still would have worked regardless, even if he hadn't gone into the terrain there. So, good spot, Bart, there. Now, onto this game. So, here's my setup. The big wall of meat there with the trombones behind. Over on this side, we've got the Rotlobbers, and these are looking towards the most valuable objectives here, which I'll show you in a minute. And more sniffs out on the flank. So, the enemy force, we've got Infernock, who is like a big nasty greater obsidian golem with even higher nerve, and he can be healed with the fireball of one of the characters. There are 2 heavy mortars. There are 2 hordes of obsidian golems there. There's a half-breed troop, and they've got the exploding crystal, the crystal pendant of retribution. So that makes them really dangerous. You don't want to be fighting them in combat. The 2 obsidian golem hordes, by the way, have upgrades on them. One of them has +1 to hit, and I think one of them has elite, maybe, or I think it's elite. Could be extra crushing, I'm not 100%. There's a regiment of immortal guard. There's a horde of black souls over on the left. There's a troop of decimators, and there's the, what's his name, Badu something. And he's a half-breed champion, but he has extra inspiring, so he's got 12-inch inspiring range. And there's the special stone priest guy is around here somewhere, and he's the one who he has a fireball, and he can heal up Infernock when he uses his fireball. So I got some nice close-ups of this army as well, because it's very, very nice. Look at this. Very tasty. Very nice, bold, striking highlights. And I'm not sure if this pose was intentional here. I think he was just pointing at 2 different units when I took the picture, but it actually looks like he's doing some kind of symbol over the top of the mortar to show how awesome it is. So that's quite funny. And there's the other one. So the objectives, over on the right, the objectives aren't worth too much. They're only worth 1 each. And the left, the one most to the left, I think is the same. That one's only worth 1 on the right. Hold on, let me see here. Is that all of them? Okay, so this one over on the right is worth 1. The next one is worth 1. So those two are both worth 1. The one on the hill and the one in the middle there, that's right, pretty much the middle of the table, those two are worth 2, and they're slightly taller objectives. And then the one over on the left there is also worth 1. So the juicy ones are in the middle and on the hill. So, turn 1. And my opponent wins the roll-off and decides to go first because it's a bit of an artillery off. So, everything is moving up. Not to within my charge range at this stage though, because they're not fast enough and there's difficult terrain everywhere. And they don't have that much ranged stuff that can affect play yet, but they do have the mortars. So Infernock is surged forward a bit, just to get closer. And the mortar, what does it do? It's a direct hit and it immediately kills the bruiser with 7 damage. So the Abyssal Dwarf mortars, they're 40 more points than the Goblin Rocklobbers, but it's the amount of guaranteed hits they do and the vicious. That's what the difference is. So they do d6 plus 4 instead of d6 plus 2, which is huge because it's just much more reliable number of almost guaranteed wounds, because with piercing 3, nearly everything they shoot at, they're going to be wounding on 2s, re-rolling 1s, so that basically every single hit turns into a wound, whereas with the Rocklobbers, far, far less reliable, and I think the Abyssal Dwarf ones are definitely worth those extra 40 points that they pay for them. So the Bruiser is immediately dead, and there's not much you can do about it, other than leaving him behind the other trolls. So my turn 1. And the Sniffs move up onto that objective immediately and pick it up. They just want to mop up the objectives on this side and distract the mortars. So the mortars will be shooting at them. Hopefully they won't hit them. And they'll have to keep shooting at them all game and not concentrate on my trolls because they're trying to get the objectives off these Sniffs. And then the Sniffs, once they've picked them up, they can then get to within 12 of the mortars and just keep shooting at them or attack them in close combat. So that's the plan for them. And I'm closing in on Infernock, not going into within enemy charge range though, because that would be crazy. And then there's going to be shooting, so the Sniffs move up onto the hill. The Sniffs and the Flaggit with his diadem, they waver at the half-breeds, which is good because they've got the exploding crystal pendant and I don't want them attacking me. Then the Rocklobbers, what do? Well, they put 13 damage onto Infernock because I moved the wizard up and put Guiding Light on him, and all 3 of them hit as a result of that. So 13 damage on him, but he doesn't die, because I didn't do very well with the nerve test there. So I was hoping to kill him in turn 1, but there he is moving forward. He hasn't had his damage counters moved up yet though. And both units of the Obsidian Golems have moved up to within troll charge range. They're obviously not scared about that. And everyone else is moving up. They're slightly hampered by the wavered half-breeds in the way, but not too much. And that's that. Everyone is just moving up to within striking distance now. You can see where my wizard is there. So it's going to be 2 big blobs of meat clashing in the centre in a minute. So my plan here is to only go for the expensive objectives, and the Sniffs over on the right are just there, as I said, to distract the mortars and pick up the lowly objectives, and I don't care about the objective on the left at all, because it's only worth 1, and I'll just leave the enemy there, because things like that horde of Black Souls, they're basically stuck over there for the whole game, because they're so slow, and there's only 1 really small objective there, so I'm quite happy that they are in that position, because they're quite a decent unit there. So these are the Decimators, I think the Breath Attack unit, and they shoot the Flaggit to death. So, wah, wah, he's dead. The Mortar does land onto the Sniffs, but luckily only does 6 damage and can't waver or kill them. So, well, hopefully that's the only hit that it will land on them so far, or for the rest of the game. That would be nice. And the other one, I'm not sure if it hit anything. I think it missed this time. So, turn 2 for the Goblins, and these Sniffs are slowed down obviously by the fact that they're carrying this token now. So they're just moving slowly over towards that fence. It's going to take them a while. This wizard is just chilling out and he's going to do some spells in a minute. So here we have the 3 Rocklobbers and the War Trombones. And they shoot Infernock and finish him off. I think the Rocklobbers may have missed him, but I think one of them probably hit this turn, and the War Trombones combined. He was already heavily damaged, so he's dead now. I would have liked to have killed him last turn, but he's dead now. And these trolls, the reason they're not centrally aligned here to this unit of golems is because Infernoc was there. They just charged to the unit behind, just to get the first hit in on them, because it's going to be quite a war of attrition there, possibly. And the other trolls, I wanted to do a double charge on this unit of golems here, because that's really the only chance I've got of taking them out in one go. And even then, it's nowhere near a guarantee, because they're defense 6, and they've got, I think it's dash 17 nerve. But I worked it out, and if I didn't kill them, on average, I wouldn't have killed them, I think I worked out. And I thought, if I don't kill them, even if it's just a slightly bad roll, I definitely wouldn't get anywhere near killing them. Then the way that they would be bouncing off an inch would have left the troll horde on the left to be flank charged by the Immortal Guard, which would not have been good. So I decided not to go for the double charge and just send one unit into each, which is usually what you shouldn't do when you're against really tough units. You want to focus and take one out. But I don't think I would have taken them out even with 2 in the front, and then I would have just been flank charged immediately afterwards. Those trolls have not picked up that token, by the way. And that's going to be important, because if these golems kill the trolls in a minute, they will have to overrun to get onto that objective. They can't just steal it off them, and I want them to come towards me and not backing away from me. Okay, and over here, these trolls do some damage to the Immortal Guard, so they can get double charged by Immortal Guard and Half-Breed next, but I felt I wanted to thrust everything in now. And the Sniffs waver the Decimators with shooting there, so that's good. And I've got one troll unit as backup, and if any of the troll units die there from the counter charges, at least one of them may, then I've got my 3 War Trombones chilling out right there, ready to turn round and scorch anything that's left, and I've got my trolls for the backup on the left flank there. All the Rock Lobbers are trained on the centre as well, so it's not going to be easy even if anything gets past the trolls. Turn 3 for the enemy, so a bit of an advance, and the Black Souls, who have a mutated Throwing Mastiff, are going to launch it at the Sniffs in a minute. But all the charges are as expected. I didn't leave anything in a position where it could have a unit surged into its flank. And yeah, that's that. The expected counter charges all happen, 1-on-1. And on the left-hand side there, you can see that the double charge does go off, as expected. And look at this. The Black Souls with the mutated Throwing Mastiff. It has 5 attacks, but if it wounds and keeps hitting and wounding over and over, then you just keep getting to re-roll those dice. So it ended up doing 13 damage to them. Because it hits on 4s, and then it's wounding, because it's piercing against a defense 3 unit, it's wounding on 2s, re-rolling 1s for the Vicious. And he just kept repeatedly hitting with the same 2 attacks over and over and over and over, and eventually got them up to 13. So, but the Sniffs on the other side got hit by another mortar. Wow, so they exploded into 1,000 pieces and dropped the token on the ground. But these ones get double wand. And my opponent elected not to use the once per game reroll, which I don't think I've used mine in either game so far, because there wasn't a critical dice roll, or any time a nerve roll was bad, both dice were so bad it wasn't even worth re-rolling one of them. So he decides not to use it here because there could be more important units to use it on. Especially, that's fair enough though, when you consider that these 3 troll units are all facing a combat, so having that re-roll still accessible. So maybe not the worst move there. And well, look at this. One of the troll units dies, one of the troll hordes, and I think one of them actually dies from that reroll, if my memory serves me correctly. So these golems kill off the trolls with a very nice roll. They are upgraded though, so it's not as unexpected as you might think. And the second troll horde dies. Oh no, it's all going horribly wrong. 2 troll hordes down. Is the third one going to go as well? No. 9 damage, but this nerve roll isn't quite as good. And I think the reroll may have been used to get rid of one of the other hordes. So 1 troll unit remaining, and you can see that the golems in the middle there overran to pick up the objective, and this is critical here. So what my opponent possibly should have done, because he wanted that unit in the middle to overrun, he should have done this combat here first. the one on the left, the one that ultimately survived, because once he knows those trolls survive, he would then probably not want to overrun those obsidian golems, because now they can be flank charged by the trolls there who survived. So there's something important to consider there. So there's how it looks. So I'm going to be able to flank charge the trolls into those golems on the hill now because they survived. And those golems are holding one of the 2-point objectives as well. And I've got other trolls behind as backup. So even though 2 troll hordes are down, and the bruiser died earlier, and that's probably a crucial thing as well, because my 1 piece of inspiring was taken off by a mortar in turn 1, my 1 piece of inspiring in the middle, and the wizard is nowhere near. So maybe I could do with more inspiring in this list, maybe another bruiser. Turn 3. So the wizard lightning bolts one of the mortars and wavers it, which will hopefully save something from exploding next time. The war trombones get into position, and combine with a Rotlobber hit, take out one of the golem hordes. So that's very nice indeed. The other golem horde was flank charged by the trolls, as I said, and was obliterated as well, and stole their 2-point objective. So both the obsidian golem hordes are dead, and the backup unit of trolls charge into the immortal guard and kill them as well. So it was looking really, really bad for a moment, and suddenly it's looking good. And here the Sniffs, because they don't have yellow-bellied when they take on a flank charge, instead of shooting anything, they decide to flank charge the Decimators, so they can do 1 damage and prevent them shooting next turn, because the Sniffs are going to die anyway. They don't have regen or anything, so next time anything touches them, they'll die. So they're just stopping that unit shooting. And that is that. So look at the end of that turn, how it swings. The middle is it was a big meat fest in there, and both sides have had massed casualties. But that 1 crucial unit of trolls surviving, and then flank charging the golems, allowing all my shooting to focus on the other one, both dead. So it's suddenly looking, it's coming up goblin at the moment, because I've got Grogger's goons that are unhurt, and they're making a beeline towards that other 2-point objective. So if I can hold both of those, then that's win. Okay, so turn 4 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So the Black Souls flank charge the Sniffs. They're going to finish them off easily. The half-breeds and, what's his name, Baduk or something, the named character half-breed champion, they charge into the trolls. And the various heroes are positioning themselves around the hill out of charge arc, I think. And look at that. So, initially, we thought that the trolls were killed, but then we remembered that the Decimators had become disordered, so they couldn't have joined in with the shooting. So the extra damage they did, that meant that the trolls actually survived. So you can see the Decimators instead go up there. We remembered they were disordered. And you can see here that these trolls become wavered and they don't have any way to shrug that off, unfortunately. So they're alright though, because they're just holding up this whole flank of the Abyssal Dwarf army, which is fine because I'm running the other way with the objectives. And that's how it looks at the end of that turn. So the trombones are still a big threat, and it's looking very healthy at the moment. Turn 4 for the goblins. So the trolls move and pick up the other objective, so they've got both of them, and the goons move right next to them, so next turn I can drop the objectives and let the goons pick them up because they're much healthier. And the war trombone moves onto the hill to have a go at the half-breeds, but doesn't finish them off, unfortunately. And the trolls just move backwards a bit. They're going to die next turn with all this charging them regardless. And the wizard is just dancing around there and lightning bolting people, but doesn't succeed with any of it, so both mortars are going to be able to shoot next time. And there's how it looks at the moment. So it's looking, in terms of killing, it's looking even. Abyssal Dwarves maybe with a slight advantage because those trolls are about to die, but the goblins, crucially, have both the 2-point objectives out of sight of most of the very slow Abyssal Dwarf forces. It is in the range of the 2 mortars, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to deal with them for the rest of the game. Only 2 more goes at that, or 1 more, 2 more. See, Braki Barker is the hero, Bardoom is the formation, that's right. Braki. So, the Immortal Guard the Black Souls, should I say, into the flank of Trolls there. As expected, the half-breeds move up onto the hill because that's where this scenario is going to be won or lost, over here. And Bracky goes into the War Trombone. So those Trolls are going to get eaten. And the Decimators are moving around, trying to get involved in the game. They're carrying a 1-point objective, by the way, the one that was down on this flank, which hopefully won't be important. Then, the Fireball onto the Trolls does a lot of damage and kills them, so they drop both the tokens in front of Grogger's Goons, who can just pick them up next time. And here, the Trombone is killed by Bracky, and he overruns to the next one. And the Trolls are killed by the Black Souls, but the Black Souls aren't much of a threat, because they're so far away now. So, it's going to come down to, here is my turn 5. So Grogger's Goons, all they have to do is survive 1 turn, possibly 2, with these objectives, and I will win, because that's worth 4 points. So the Trombones just have a go at tromboning the half-breeds on the hill, and the Rock Lobber all combine, put a decent amount of damage on them, but only managed to waver them, I think. Yep. So my thinking was the only way he's realistically got a good chance of killing Grogger's Goons, because 1 mortar hit is probably what you could expect out of 2. That isn't going to take them out, most likely, because at most you could do 10 damage if you get very lucky, and then you'd need to roll 11 on the nerve check to remove them, and they are inspired, I think. So, because I moved the wizard towards them. So the half-breeds and Bracky charging into the front of them is the most likely course of action, which also probably wouldn't kill them in 1 round. So I'm thinking it's looking very good at this stage, and I've wavered them now. So the only option is going to be for him to shoot at them. There is the Fireball to join in as well. So turn 6, and the half-breeds just spin round because they can't charge due to being wavered. Another War Trombone is going to get eaten, I think. And 1 mortar. Second mortar. What do they do? And the Fireball. No. 2 successful mortar hits on the loot-carrying horde. My final unit, capable of carrying tokens, takes 19 damage from 2 direct mortar hits. The 2 mortar hits do 15 damage between them. And then the Fireball adds on some more as well. Wow, wow, wow. So, that unit explodes. The tokens are dropped on the ground. So to get a draw out of this game now, I need to kill the Decimators that are carrying one of the tokens, who are hiding. So, the only person that can do anything about that is the wizard. But they are damaged already, that unit, quite decently. So turn 6, the wizard moves over there and takes a shot at the Decimators. Does damage to them, but fails to remove them. So now I need turn 7, so I've got another chance to kill them. And the Rock Lobbers hit the floor this round. And the Decimators with the token. That's where the game ends. There is no turn 7. So, Grogger's Goons double mortared off in the last turn. So a winning position turns into a losing position. A 4-1 win turns into a 1-0 loss in 1 fell swoop. Unable to kill the Decimators with the lightning bolt, and it's a win for the Abyssal Dwarves. Wow, wow, wow. But you can't really complain about that, because anytime you get a game down to a final dice roll like that, and it's obviously skewed in my favour, because it required probably both of the mortars to hit to have a realistic chance of killing Grogger's Goons. So you can't really argue with getting yourself into that position and then dead. What can you do? Not a lot. So I get a couple of bonus points for kills, because I didn't kill that much because I went all in for the scenario. As you saw at the end, I was just trying to run the objectives away from the bulk of the opposing army. And yeah, wow, wow, wow. So the wizard failing to do any lightning bolt damage to potentially waver the already wounded mortar was potentially critical. And yeah, so that's that. On to the next game. On to game number 5, and this is against elves. So we've already had one game against elves. This is a different elf army, and I just played against the army that won one of the best painting awards, and this one won the other award. So getting to play against the two best armies. I think from a technical standpoint, this elf army here, as you'll see from the close-ups in a minute, is possibly one of the best armies that I've seen at any tournament ever, from a purely technical standpoint. So you'll see why in a minute. And then, of course, I was very complimentary of the previous army because of the very bold, striking colours. It's more of an abstract paint scheme, though. Whereas these elves here, they're more like how you would expect, like the really top level, like, because they're the old, or, well, they're not that old, but the GW elves. And the way you would expect, like, the top level, like, studio elf army to look. They look very much like that. I think it's the same colour scheme. But the basing on these is possibly nicer. So, this scenario is control. So, 6 table sections. Victory point for each one you control at the end via having more unit strength in it. 2 points if you can control the middle one on your opponent's side. Pretty simple. And let's see what we've got here. So, on the left flank, I've gone for Grogger's Goons backed up by Sniffs because they're not facing much of a challenge over on this side. So 2 units over there. Assuming they don't get shot off, that should be 2 units that's enough to hold those 2 table sections for me. That's the thinking there. All I have to do is get to those archers. Then, in fact, thinking about it, I could have possibly positioned Grogger's Goons a bit better here, because I'm going to be able to move directly forward straight away. I'm not sure if it would have been possible, though, to do it better, because if I'd positioned them at a certain angle, I think I may have had a straight direct run through those obstacles. I don't think so, actually, though, because if I recall, the gap between the piece of terrain that's just that little pillar in the middle on its own and the woods isn't big enough for a horde to fit through. So I think at some point I'm going to hit difficult terrain wherever I go. So they aren't going to be at their maximum speed, however I angle them. So I've positioned them so in the first turn they can go straight ahead 10 inches. And then I've got the big wall of meat in the middle, because that's where the game may be won or lost. In the centre, the 2 central areas are obviously very valuable. So I've got all 4 troll hordes and the bruiser in there, backed up by some trombones. Then I've got a lobber looking out over to the right flank, and so you get an idea of the angle there, because it can see over into the far right corner, and it can also see into that lane between the hill and the big piece of blocking terrain there. So that lobber is over there. And over in this corner, we've got a couple of characters. We've got some Sniffs backed up by a trombone and 2 other lobbers, because they're very close to the back edge. I wanted to position them so that if the enemy go first, they won't be able to fly to within 12 inches, so they won't be able to get too close for me to shoot them. And as you can see, I'll leave it lingering on these pictures for a minute or two, because look at the ridiculously high quality paint job on there. Just obscenely good, the various shading or blending or whatever's gone on there. I'm not skilled enough to know the exact intricacies of what goes into painting something like that. All my techniques are very, very simple by comparison, I'm very sure about that. So, there are some heavy cavalry. This is the extra large juicy dragon, by the way, on the 75mm, so he's extra tasty. He's got, I think it's got fireball, something like that, and Stormwind cavalry, 2 Stormwind cavalry, and then there is a formation. There is a mounted hero there as well, but there's a formation with these 3 units. I think they're Palace Guard. There's 2 regiments and a horde, and the formation gives them all regeneration. And the 2 Stormwind cavalry units have Headstrong, which may be from a formation as well. And there is a hero lurking there. I think it may be the Green Lady. I think that's correct. So that's there, and then there is a horde of archers, and they have extra piercing, I think, on their shots. So they're kind of on their own over there, though. So, turn 1. Obviously, the dragon is getting right in there before I can do too much damage. My opponent won the roll-off and elected to go first, and I suppose that's one good factor in taking rock lobbers. If you're not investing too heavily in them, and you're not throwing too many points away on indirect war machines, you just have a little sprinkling of them, you can encourage your opponent to go first when otherwise it might not be beneficial. In a scenario like this, then when you've got a speed advantage, especially if you've got flyers, then being able to hop around between areas where you can score in the last turn when your opponent's already finished can be quite important. So you're kind of forcing them to pick going first to avoid being shot by the artillery. So that could be something to think about when deciding whether to leave out lobbers in the future. Because I do typically prefer to go second when I don't have artillery. For that reason, because you can hop around onto objectives and so on. And the knights move up there as well. So I'm a little bit sacrificial with this flank here, but I have got lots of war trombones around this area who can come over here. And I'm thinking I can hold them up for a decent amount of time because there's so many little units and only 2 enemy units coming in. It's going to take them a few turns to chew through it all. And in the middle, this big wall of elven death. The elves can match speed with the trolls quite easily, so this might be a bit of a standoff, but those knights are obviously faster. And the archers shoot up the troll horde that was over on this side, closest to this side, and waver them with a nice nerve roll there. So they're going to be a bit stuck, but everything else is going to be moving forward. Turn 1 for the goblins. So the sniffs move out the way so they're not giving cover from the war trombone, and they're also positioning themselves so that the dragon can't charge the rock lobbers because they won't be able to. It won't be able to fit its base in there. And all the shooting, the trombone, the rock lobbers, the sniffs, put about 7 damage onto the dragon, so that's a good start. These sniffs over on the left flank move into the woods, and they start shooting up the enemy archers, put 3 damage on them, making sure they're in cover because they're a perfect candidate to be horribly shot off by enemy archers, because they're very weak. And these trolls move up. The one on the right there, nearest the rock, have moved into charge range of the elven knights. They're quite happy to accept that because it would be hindered. And the other trolls are there as backup as well. And the ones in the middle are not on the hill, so they're not going to be charged by anybody. The wavered unit just turned around a bit. And Grogger's goons, you can see, went straight forward 10 inches, and then next turn they're going to have to pivot and go 5 forwards, and it'll be another turn at least before they get anywhere near those archers, but they only want to get there eventually. And I'm hoping they can survive being shot at by the archers as well. So that's how it looks down this side as well. So I've made sure that those war trombones at the bottom of the screen are not in charge arc of anything, so the dragon can't see them, but he can see the one in the middle of the little firing block. Turn 2 for the elves. So the dragon, here's your thumbnail image. The dragon decides to attack the trombone, and this is one of the few times that this dragon can probably press right up to an enemy unit because the war trombone is very low to the ground. So he's going to eat that. And the knights and the hero combine to charge into the sniffs, so they'll eat them quite handily. I think it's the green lady moves up and is just going to be trying to heal the dragon, probably. The archers shoot up the trolls again, the same units, put them up to way more damage this time, and this time get a bit unlucky with the roll to only waver them, when they might have hoped to kill them this time. So a bit lucky to waver them the first time, unlucky to waver them this time. So hopefully that balances out, and these units are all too close to the rock lobbers now, and there's how they position themselves afterwards. However, I am questioning the wisdom of turning the cavalry like that, because that's actually opening a firing lane from the rock lobber to the other elven knights, which you will see when we get to the wide shot, because I think they were blocking off at least one of the lobbers previously. So the dragon eats the trombone, of course, and turns to face down that way, so I'm going to have to shoot it a lot, because it was healed up to 5 wounds only. So you can see where the other elven knights are in the top of the screen. So I think both lobbers can actually see them now because of the pivot from the storm wind that had killed the sniffs. So there's just not always something that goes through your mind, though. When units are far apart like that and they're like part of a different battle line, then you don't always think about them kind of crossing over. It's like when you ignore a flyer that has a flank charge on one of your units that seems really far away and like they're in 2 totally different fights, so your brain doesn't connect the 2 things together sometimes. Turn 2 for me. So I ignore the fact that this dragon is looking into the flank or the rear of my entire army, and I just shoot it with everything I've got. And this is how I position the trombones, so only the front one could be charged by it, because I don't want the Flaggett to be charged, because he's providing inspiring. And yeah, only one at a time. Just going to have to work your way through them and then get flamed by the rest. The Rocklobber hits, and the trombones and the diadem all combine to put the dragon on 15 wounds, and it's dead. So that's good. It paid off. It was a big risk though, because it could have had a rear or flank charge on some of my trolls if it hadn't died. But it paid off. The other Rocklobbers, one of them seems to land on these knights and does 4 damage. And you can see Grogger's goons slowly making their way towards the archers. They will be in range to charge next turn, I believe, if the archers don't move. So that's what I was assuming they would do, actually. I thought they'd move back just an inch to get out of charge range and then shoot, and maybe buy themselves one more turn of life. And I've also thrust one unit of trolls forward, as if to say, charge me with everything you've got, and then my trolls down here, next to the hill, and the bruiser, who can see through a little crevice there, I've positioned him to make sure of that. Those 2 units will then come in and charge you and have a go at whatever you charge me with. And if you want to join in with the Horde, then there's going to be a nice multi-charge available on them. The Troll Horde in the bottom left there isn't on the hill, so they can't actually see over it at the moment. So they're a bit stuck if the enemy don't move. So there's how it looks. It's a bit of a standoff, but I've put one unit there. Who wants to attack them? Who wants to have a go? And you'll notice that the unit I've thrown in there is the Dwarven Ale unit as well. So if they do get wavered, which is quite likely with trolls, then there's a good chance they'll be able to join in again. And I've made sure everything's in the front as well. That's very important. The only one that's in the flank, actually, is the regiment of Palace Guard on the left, but they can't see them because they're not technically on the hill. Turn 3. So the elves are going to start mopping up through all this mess of units here, which is okay by me. One Rocklobber's going to get eaten, one trombone's going to get eaten. And a double charge from the knights and one of the regiments onto the troll horde there. So, am I pleased that the horde didn't go in as well? I think if the horde went in, the trolls would almost certainly have died. So we'll see whether that backfires. But that's where the horde actually end up. So I'm extra pleased about that, actually. The horde has gone up onto the hill. Because if the horde were going to be putting themselves in my sight anyway, they may well have been better off going in to join in on the trolls. Because those 3 units combined would have almost certainly killed the unit, and then they would have been able to... They would have been possibly limited in their pivoting options, but the regiment in the middle could have overrun and allowed the horde to pivot, who the horde are obviously more valuable. So I think possibly a triple charge could have been better there. Maybe. The archers shoot up some trolls and put 8 damage on them. Don't waver though, which is nice for me. And these Stormwind get healed up. And of course the Rocklobber is eaten. War Trombone is eaten. And these trolls, as I suggested, get wavered. So with that Dwarven Ale, I've still got my reroll at this point, and I was saying that this is a really critical moment in the game here, and it could be a moment where I want to use the reroll if I fail. So, if those trolls had died, then I would have been more limited with what I could throw in here. But you'll see what I'm going to do, because what I'm thinking is, the trolls, if they pass their Dwarven Ale, they'll countercharge into the knights, which will leave enough space for me to do a triple charge with the 2 troll hordes and the bruiser onto the horde of Palace Guard who have put themselves on the hill. So I would hope to kill them in one go and then just deal with the 2 regiments afterwards. We'll see though. Turn 3. So, Rocklobber lands on the knights and wavers them, but they are headstrong, remember, so they may be able to ignore that. The trolls do pass their headstrong test and go into the knights, put some damage on them. And the triple charge on the horde does succeed, tons of damage. Bruisey and 2 hordes of trolls, eat them for dinner. And the goons make it into the archers, who didn't move backwards. But they would have been on -1 to hit. They obviously wanted to get off one good round of shooting before they died, presumably. So then they aren't immediately killed by the goons, but I would expect them to die next turn. And the Sniffs take a bit of a shot at those Palace Guard that are directly opposite them, the ones with the golden thingamajig on the corner of them, but I don't think they do any damage. So I've moved the trolls in such a way that they can't be flanked by any of the enemy units as well. I think the troll bruiser may have gone backwards, and the only flanks available are from units that can't see each other at this stage, so that's quite pleasing. Turn 4 for the elves, so the countercharge is on, and most of them have to go back in on their own. I would expect the knights to kill these trolls here this time. The 2 regiments of Palace Guard go into the 2 troll hordes. One of them's damaged. And the archers countercharge the goons. And another war trombone is going to get finished off there. And these knights keep being healed up. And another lobber is going to get eaten. Yep, there we go. And he overruns. Trombone also eaten, of course. And look at this, 12 damage. Very unlucky here that these trolls only get wavered again. Very poor roll there, and a waver on the Dwarven Ale unit again could be bad. These trolls just take 6 damage. I wouldn't expect them to die because they were unhurt. This unit here gets up to 6, but they don't even get wavered. They were on 6, I should say. They get up to 10 and don't even manage to waver them. So another really poor nerve roll there, and that could see the end of the Elven challenge for this game there. A couple of poor nerve rolls and not much damage done on the goons. So these trolls are all in prime position to just inflict swift death, and we could be looking at a very bad situation for the elves next turn now because of those 2 poor rolls. So let's see if both those troll hordes had died, which is what you would expect to happen, and the middle one surviving. The middle one would have gone back into the Palace Guard regiment, possibly killed them. The bruiser maybe into the other one, wouldn't have killed them. The knights would have been shot at by lots of things. You'd expect them to survive unless they got hit by multiple rocks. So it would have been a lot closer than what it could end up being, because let's look at this. Goblin turn 4, 1 unit dead, double charged by the bruiser and the troll horde. And the bruiser turns back to face lower so that he can go back into my central area, because this is control, remember, so I'm thinking about the scenario. So all these trolls are going to split up and head in different directions. The wounded unit is going to go straight forward, I think, and both of the other units that were charged get killed as well. So the trolls on the left there kill off the other Palace Guard, and the knights go down to the trolls that were wavered twice and passed a Dwarven Ale roll both times. So very unlucky for the elves there. But their battle line has collapsed in the middle. The lobber hits on those elves and wavers them again, but they're headstrong still, so they may still be able to do something. Grugger's goons kill the archers, and look at that. It's looking very, very bad for the elves. They've only got 1 scoring unit left in the control scenario, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there are only 6 zones to control, so I can end up controlling all the zones here. And it's looking very bad because I've got a couple of turns left still to spread out. Turn 5 for the elves. So these guys fail their headstrong roll and don't go anywhere, but they do get healed up. And the mounted hero has moved up into a threatening position. So that's the shortest turn ever. All it was healing, because the 1 unit that could have done something useful failed its headstrong test, and he's already used his reroll. Oh dear. Turn 5 for the goblins, blocking them in with the flaget and shooting at them a bit, not doing much though. And the trolls just spreading out. One of them heading back down into the middle, just to try and get maximum points, try and push me up the leaderboard a bit. Everyone spreading out. The Sniff's going for the bottom left zone. And that's the end of that turn. Onto the enemy turn, and the hero charges into the trolls, trying to take them out, but doesn't do enough damage. And these guys, the Stormwind, do charge into the flaget, and they're going to kill him quite easily, and they get healed up again. So they've been wavered a lot, healed a lot. They've just had a very strange game, and they managed to kill off him. or kill him off, should I say. And those trolls down there actually do become wavered as a result of that combat with the hero. So it's still looking great for the goblins. Turn 6, the Bruiser charges into the knights. Doesn't do much, but pens them in there, and the other trolls are coming down to join in now. And those trolls regenerate tons of wounds. I mean, look at that. Insane. So, very, very close to the end of the game. But we do get a turn 7. If it just ended there, then I believe the elves would have actually owned one of the table sections and got a bonus tournament point. But we do get a turn 7. So this hero decides he wants to get some kill points and try and take out that Rotlobber. And the knights decide they want to try and kill the Bruiser, but they can only waver him. And the Rotlobber gets eaten, of course. And it's going to be Goblin turn 7. So pretty much I just guarantee myself controlling every single board section by charging the trolls in with the Bruiser, nimbly moving out the way. And that's going to be that. They don't kill the knights though, only waver them again. And these guys can't kill the hero either. So there's some expensive elven units left on the table, but I believe every single potentially scoring unit I started with has survived the game. The only things that died were every single war machine and the Flaggit. So yeah, the strategy obviously paid off of building that corner with all the kind of expendable things that would have to be chewed through. Killing the dragon early obviously helped, because it wasn't able to attack the rest of my army. And then spreading everything out, claiming all the table sections, it was clear it was going to be a win. As soon as there was that one turn where the elves failed to kill any of those troll units in the middle, I would have expected 2 of them to die, which would have made it a lot closer. I would hope that ultimately I would have still had enough units around to win. And you never know though. It was close up to that point, and then suddenly it all slipped away. So I got a vast amount of points for that game. Maximum bonus tournament points for victory points, and not quite maximum though for the kill points, because there are some expensive elven units left. The heroes are quite pricey. So after all that, 2 wins and 3 losses. What did I feel like I deserved from that tournament? I think maybe at least one of the losses I could have won. The one I was least likely to win, I think, was probably game 2 against the Twilight Kin. I think that's a very strong list against what I bring. It's got the speed, it's got the maneuverability, and it's got the ability to easily outgun me as well. So I think that was just a bad matchup. I think the other games, though, I could have definitely won and almost did win. Particularly game 4, which obviously turned from a winning position into a losing one with virtually the last meaningful roll of the game. And game 1, I felt like I made quite a few mistakes in game 1, but looking back on it, there was a couple of things I probably should have done differently. There were gambles to be taken, and maybe I could have taken a different one, but any option would have been a risk, because there was small bits of bad luck, nothing too ridiculously huge. The biggest one probably when the trolls went into the Elohai and only did a couple of damage points instead of the expected amount. But apart from that, when something goes wrong, you have to readjust your plan, and whichever way you go is going to be a risk after that. And obviously I just picked the wrong path in that game. And overall, even though it wasn't very good in terms of wins, I quite like the list. I'm not 100% sure about the Rotlobbers being in it, though. In certain games they helped, certain games they barely hit anything, which is as you'd normally expect with the Lobbers, but I can't help thinking that, is there anything the Rotlobbers did that couldn't have been improved upon by having something different in there? For example, a Colossal Giant. One Colossal Giant is cheaper than 3 Rotlobbers put together. Would he have been able to help? Probably. I could take a Troll Bruiser, a Mincer, and afford some more Troll artifacts, perhaps, to make them even deadlier. There are definitely other options. There are, like, the Spitter Hordes. that you can take instead of rock lobbers that are better for controlling objectives and such, and more survivable, of course, and less random. So definitely other options. Bart says, what would you change in your list to make it less matchup dependent? Well, ways that I've been looking at to counter the things that give me trouble, which are the armies that I don't want to advance on because they're faster than me, so I don't want to just get charged left, right, and centre, and can also outshoot me, so I have to advance on them. So the ways to deal with that, there are a few options. I've been looking at the Critter's Call spell, which disorders units. So when you're against like a really expensive deadly archer horde, once per game, you can just disorder them, which gives you a free turn to move forwards without worrying about their withering hail of arrows. So that could be something. Something fast to go and tie up archers would be an option. Without allying something in, the only option goblins have are mounted characters who are very fast, but they're not the strongest. And against elven, for example, elven archer hordes, a goblin bigot would most likely be killed on the countercharge by elite archers. So I'm not sure he's the best option either. So another option would be because rock lobbers are terrible at taking out hordes of archers in general, because you're not expecting that many hits, but when they do hit, they are going to wound. So they're better at taking things out that are medium nerve, things like ogre units or chariots, for example. Not great at killing 20 plus nerve units, unless, of course, you hit two of them, 2 Abyssal Dwarf mortars on 1 Grogger's Goon horde, which obviously kills them, but it's unlikely to happen. So the other option would be ignoring the artillery battery completely and going for things like mincers, who can move up behind the rest of the units, so that I can then advance more freely without worrying about being charged by the faster enemy units, because then there's always more units behind as backup. So if they charge into a unit of trolls and kill it, well, who cares? Here's another unit of trolls and a bruiser and a mincer to the face. So see how you like that. So just go kind of all combat. Apart from the sniffs and the trombones, they have to stay, obviously. And I think the diadem is a really good choice. If I was taking out the rock lobbers, I would almost certainly take out the wizard as well, because he was only really there. He was there for an extra bit of inspiring, which I could make up for by having another troll bruiser in there who would inspire the important units in my army. And he would also give me more of a combat punch, because I wouldn't need the guiding light anymore. The lightning bolt didn't really do much in this event. Normally I like to put the Fenulian amulet on him to give him lightning bolt 5. I think at Clash of Kings I took a foot wizard with lightning bolt 5, just to, because I think it was, how many points is he with that? Something like 65 points, because you can't get much else with that amount of points, so I think that was nice. Bart says Troll Bruiser with Honey Maze. That would be amazing if you could give the Troll Bruiser the Wings of Honey Maze, but unfortunately you can only give that to individuals. So, yeah. I don't think there are any flying individuals that you can ally in either. I think they're all named characters, aren't they? Like Basusu and so on. But, yeah, there are some options. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and think about how to best complement this wall of trolls that I've assembled. And I think having backup combat units rather than the rock lobbers may be the way to go. But we shall see. Okay, any other thoughts? Let's just have a look at the list here before we start to wrap this one up. So I think the upgrades I take on the trolls work, definitely. They have worked. And there were times in this event where the Staying Stone prevented a waiver. You saw plenty of times when Dwarven Ale essentially won me a game. The Chalice of Wrath obviously does a similar job to the Dwarven Ale. And the other unit without an upgrade, I felt the effects of them not having one at various points, so maybe I would like to put something on them, maybe give them extra nerve. Other options that I've got to change the list, putting something like Banner of the Griffin on one of the Troll Bruisers, if I take 2. Then just boosting the nerve of all nearby units, which could be big. Because trolls, they are susceptible. If you focus fire on them, you can take them out in one go with only nerve 17. And so that's possibly something to think about. There's also giants. I've got plenty of giants, but I haven't been running them a lot lately. I feel like they are a bit underwhelming, especially now that the Colossal Giant is out there, who's not that much more expensive considering you're guaranteeing more attacks. more attacks is the key thing, but he also has other special features as well. For example, unwaverable, which is a huge issue. And he has other things like vicious against infantry, and infantry is usually where you'd be wasting the extra crushing strength that he has, so that kind of makes up for that. So the Colossal Giant looks really good, but I'm waiting for the Frost Giant to be released before I get one of those. And I think that's only been out, I think the Kickstarter ones were possibly out, but the actual full release hasn't happened yet for the Frost Giant, so I'm waiting for that. And away from goblins, let's have a little spoiler alert here to show you what I'm working on next, because obviously I've got the Rordia, but there's nothing really for me to work on with those at the moment. I may get some more models for that army at some stage, but obviously it's very expensive to keep adding with the metal models I've been using. There are the TT Combat Undead Halflings that I've been looking at, so when they're released I'll have a look at their range and see if I want to add anything, but we'll see about that. However, I have a bag of miniatures that's just been sitting in my attic for quite some time. I think it was in a Mantic Crazy box or something a long time ago, and I'm going to paint them and see how it goes. And they are, let's see if you can see this, it is, let's get him right up to the camera, obnoxiously close until it refuses to focus. There we go. It's not focusing, but you can see what it is. So that it is an Abyssal Dwarf. Oh, there you go, I just had to hold it not quite so horrendously close. So, I've got 10 of these little guys, and I'm going to paint them up in a nice golden colour scheme, I think. See how that goes. If I like them, then maybe I'll start an army of those. Because I've got other things I can use in the army as well. I've got this Vanguard Gargoyle, which can easily be used as a Basusu. It looks almost the same as that model, in fact. So, that's something to think about. I could use that. I've got one or two other things not within grabbing range at the moment that I could use, but Abyssal Dwarves were an army that I've wanted to try for a while, so we'll see how the test paint goes, and I'll keep you up to date with that as well, as that moves along, because it's obviously a game I'm playing a lot, Kings of War. I think I've been to about 8 tournaments this year, so it's on track to be my most events in a year, and it can never hurt to have too many armies for a game you play a lot. Anything else? I think I'm at number 6 in the UK rankings at the moment for Kings of War, which is good. I finished last year at number 5, or I think it was 5 last year, so that was good. This season I've obviously upped it a bit by winning my first tournament, which was a big deal. This tournament here that I've just been talking about, I finished 18th out of 24, which isn't ideal, but I think there were a couple of unlucky moments that made that a little bit lower than it could have been. And it was also a very strong lineup of not only players, but lists as well. There were some very, very powerful lists. I don't think mine was particularly weak, but we have just been talking about ways that I think it could be improved. So, let's disappear from the corner of the screen now, as we wrap this one up. If anyone has any last minute questions, you better drop them in straight away, because we've been going quite long enough now. I think this is part 2 of the video. So, don't forget to check out all the links in the description, all the social media stuff, join my Facebook group, follow me on Twitter, all those shenanigans. Don't forget to send me all your money, because you enjoy all these battle and tournament reports so much that it actually causes you directly to boost your productivity in the world and increase your income by about 50%, and then you funnel all of that directly to me, which I believe is how it works. And anything else? Anything else I want to add before we depart? Don't think so. So thanks for watching, everyone that was here live. There were quite a few of you commenting along the way. So all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.